Hello again, everybody. What's going on? It's Mr. G here, and now we're going to be talking about Chapter 14, which is creating a healing environment. I'm going to try and keep this one brief. There's 42 slides. I'm not going to go above and beyond with a lot of stuff. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. There's a few towards the end that I think bear a little more conversation, but we'll go through the healing environment a little bit quickly. So here we go. All right, a couple key questions. When I walk into my best friend's apartment, I seem to relax. Something about that place helps me unwind. Do things like color, plants, light really make a difference in how we feel? So that's the first question. It might not be a best friend's house, but for those of you in my 2018 class and came to the yoga class that we did in week 3, I want you to think about how you felt when walking into that particular studio. Did you notice environmentally what was going on? The color, the sounds, the lighting. It was all very, very intentional by my estimation, and it's going to probably be brought to light as we go through this chapter. And then if all this new technology is supposed to help me have more time to relax, why do I feel busier and more stressed than ever? So we will talk about techno stress as well as we go through this. So let's quickly go through the objectives. I'm just going to skip right by them. Oh, but we will talk about hot weather and stress. Oh, yeah. All right, so let's talk about stress in the environment. Your external environment consists of objects, conditions, and situations that surround us. An environmental stressor, some aspect of our environment that we perceive, remember the perception is key, as annoying, distracting, uncomfortable, or stressful. So different types of environmental stressors. Some of them will make headlines, right? The big ones, the big nasty ones, tsunamis, terrorist attacks. Those are big, giant environmental stressors. Others, they're a bit more subtle. Air pollution, noise, overcrowding, technology. And when I say those things, some of them might stand out to you as being things that might be stressful to you. Others might be like, what do you mean? Like noise, why is that stressful? Well, again, it goes back to what we've been saying all month long, and that is that perception is the key component of whether an environmental factor is considered to be stressful. Also, when it comes to environmental stressors, there is a learned response that we have with our environment. So when we associate a specific environment with something painful in that environment, the two will get linked. For example, dentists, they know all too well what this means. First of all, most people talk about dentists as an experience that is fearful. But, I mean, when they're in there working on your teeth, it's painful. There's blood. There's all kinds of stuff, especially if you don't go to the dentist regularly, which you should. Every 6 months is when you should go for your biannual cleanings. It's something that I neglected to do for years, many years, but I have been keeping up for the last 2 years. And though it is not necessarily pleasant and is sometimes a bit painful, each time that I have gone, it has gotten less and less so. It was really only bad in the first place because I neglected to go as often as I should. So that's an example. There are others where environments, you see them as being painful, and that link is there. But that's really based on your own interpretation of it. When it comes to managing them, I mean, it's all about taking a proactive approach. Either reduce or eliminate your stressors. So coming up with a plan, knowing what you're walking into, having an idea what that is. If you, again, remember, a lot of our stress comes from this failure or this inability to plan. If we feel out of control, that causes significant distress. If you know you're going to be walking into an environment where you are going to feel stressed, you can either choose not to go at all, if that is an option, and if not, you can choose to do certain things that might at least mitigate some of the stressful experience. So those are both options that really should be there, and they are two of the big stress management techniques that we're talking about this month. It might seem simple, but a lot of people don't even think to do them, and that's why we have trouble managing stress in the first place. You can reduce or eliminate stressors from your life. It's not as hard as you might think. Another thing when it comes to violence, thank you to my watch for beeping, clear link between a stressful environment and violence. So the extent to which stress contributes to violence is hard to measure. However, it's generally agreed that homicide and suicide may result from increased levels of stress. So stress will cloud the mind and make us more aggressive in our approach, and those can lead to very violent ends for ourselves or others. So that is something to keep in mind. Here's some concepts that have to do with color. Colors have been an important part of healing for thousands of years, believe it or not. Ancient Egyptians ascribed healing powers to various colors. They identified ones that they thought would have a healing component to it. And then also in India, colors and specific meanings are assigned to the 12 chakras or energy centers of the body. I think Florence Nightingale, commonly, if I'm not mistaken, associated with, she's the founder of modern nursing. There it is, right in the book. She believed that a healthy house had 5 essential characteristics: pure air, pure water, efficient drainage, cleanliness, and light. She believed that no home could be healthy without these, and that the home would be unhealthy in proportion to their deficiency. So the healthier these are, the healthier the home. The less healthy or the less present that some of these factors were, well, the less healthy the home would be. So a healing environment, that's what we're talking about here, and we'll get back to color in just a minute, is one in which individuals are supported and nurtured, they feel calm, and health and well-being are promoted. So that is what we mean when we say a healing environment. Color, going back to that concept, it can raise or lower your stress and energy level. There is something known as chromotherapy. It is a specific discipline that uses colors to treat individuals with certain disorders. Before we go on to light, just a couple things on color. Warmer colors, as they're described, such as peach, soft yellows, and coral, can stimulate the appetite and encourage alertness, creativity, and socialization. These are good colors for areas such as dining rooms and meeting spaces. Blues, greens, violets, and other cool colors are useful in areas designed to be restful, spiritual, contemplative, and quiet, such as bedrooms and meditative areas. The primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, and strong patterns are pleasing at first but can be overstimulating and may contribute to fatigue. Green symbolizes growth, healing, spirituality, and peace, and has been used to reduce tension and nervousness. So those are a couple of little things about chromotherapy. Take it for what you will, but even down to like using a red pen and the connotations that we have with certain colors might have a lot to do with our stress levels. So let's talk about light, form of electromagnetic energy that can have both positive and negative effects on living organisms. Here's an interesting thing. We studied this a lot in all of my psychology courses. It's something that in Florida is maybe not as observed because we don't deal with the significant swings in temperature and other things that have to do with the season. But we know that during the winter time, there are shorter periods of daylight. This happens naturally. That's been shown to trigger something known as seasonal affective disorder. Okay, SAD is the acronym for it, but seasonal affective disorder is almost like a seasonal depression where people get into a very, very deep depressive state, but it is related specifically and only really rears its head during the winter and fall sometimes, and then once the spring comes around and the days get longer, it starts to diminish and people go back to their normal affect. We say affect, that has to do with like your mood. Okay, so it's different. It's spelled the same as affect, but affective disorder, we are talking about your mood. It's related to melatonin and produced by the pineal gland, in case you were interested in the science of it. We'll skip the culture connection. I'll let you read that on your own if you choose on your own slides. Here's a good one, and we'll hear about, I'll mention the smell of pine in one of our meditations coming up in week 4, but the natural scent of pine is a calming scent, so there you go. Talking about smell now, smell is analyzed in the limbic part of the brain, an area that is also associated with emotions. So it's not surprising that an aroma can affect how we feel. So aromatherapy is a type of stress management tool that you can use. It is the therapeutic use of essential oils. You probably hear a lot of the very healthy oriented people talking about essential oils and what they do. But believe it or not, they actually can lower stress levels. And there are some differences between essential oils and the synthetic products. And those are going to be the fake ones that people make. And actually, believe it or not, many synthetic aromas have dubious therapeutic effects, and the long-term effects are unknown. So make sure, if that is something that you're looking at as a potential way of improving your mood, affecting how you feel, that you look into the actual essential oils versus something that is synthetic, something that is man-made. Air quality. Clean, fresh air, that's what we're talking about. There are some benefits. Things that you can do that would be beneficial for you. Study in fresh air. I know that's hard to do here, especially this time of year, because it is hot out, and even though the air might be fresh, it is very hot, and we will talk about temperature soon. It would reduce exposure to tobacco smoke. Heck, even at least here on campus, if you try to do something outside and go in the seating area, well, that's also designated as the smoking area. So to sit outside and maybe do something, you're going to be forced to inhale the fumes of people's tobacco smoke. And in pleasant scents, well, we know that those can have a good effect too. Let's talk about noise. I love noise. I don't know if everyone does. And sometimes I guess it gets to me, but I don't know. Again, while teaching this class, I'm always analyzing myself, going back over the things that kind of drive me and make me who I am. And I am a person that generally does have a lot of noise surrounding me. And as I keep reading more and more about this and the stress it causes, I'm wondering if that is in my best interest. Science certainly seems to say no, but the quiet also seems to drive me crazy. So I don't know where to how to help myself. But noise, they've shown, does have negative effects on human health and well-being. Now, at extreme levels, you're talking things like hearing loss. Lots of noise can cause stress, sleep loss, distraction, and lost productivity. Usually the lost productivity is a result of those distractions, and a general reduction in the quality of life and opportunities for tranquility. So there you go. It is measured in decibels, and there is a nice little chart on the next slide, figure 14.1, that gives you some examples of what the decibel levels are and how we find them and what examples are. So there you go. Things like what I do, like my trivia hosting and playing music for people and speaking over things. That's probably, looking at this, that might even be all the way up in the 100 decibel level. Video arcade, a loud factory, subway train. I don't know. Which is a higher risk for injury. Sometimes when people that are not playing the game will come in and complain about the volume of our game, usually they mean me, I think, because I am just very loud, as all of you are well aware. But based on this, maybe they're on to something. But people got to hear me, so I don't know what to do. I don't know. I can't give everybody headphones and speak to them as I'm speaking to you. I guess that could be a solution. Indoor pollution. Indoor air pollution is one of the top 5 environmental risks to public health. Indoor air may contain more pollutants at higher concentrations than outdoor air. So where you are inside, if the air is polluted, that's no good either. Here's another thing about scent. There's a little study here done. Patients administered a pleasant scent during an MRI report lower levels of stress. I know the MRIs, because I've had one before. I had one on my lower back, and I was pretty calm about it. I went to a place called Open MRI. I know they have some here in Jacksonville, but they stick you in pretty close quarters, and if someone is claustrophobic or if they don't like tight enclosed places, it is not a very fun experience. And so I could see that as being something that is significantly stressful for someone. I am not typically bothered by those sorts of things. So they've said to me, like, you're probably the calmest person I've ever seen in one of these, which I was surprised to hear because they do this every day. And I said, really? She's like, yeah, people, I mean, she's like, you're one of maybe 5 people ever that's not in here freaking out, which I was very surprised with. So people definitely stress about an MRI, and they did a study where they emitted a pleasant scent into the room, and what they found was that there were lower levels of stress. So there you go. All you college kids, all you folks that like to wear your headphones, who knows, maybe you're wearing headphones now. Hopefully my voice doesn't cause you any of the issues we're talking about here, but as many as 1 in 4 college students do have some mild hearing loss. Could be the result of personal music devices and extended use of earbuds that deliver sound close to the eardrum. You're an earbud person, and you're getting that blast of concentrated sound right in there. Yeah, I could see that happening. I used to do that a lot while I was in college myself. I used earbuds, and then, being out late at night and hanging out in loud places, bars and DJs and all that stuff, those can have an effect. So I wouldn't be surprised if I also didn't have some hearing loss, which would actually be a really tragic thing considering everything that I do. My hearing is everything. But there you go. Speaking of noisiness, again, perception is what it's all about. The subjective assessment of noise that combines the decibel level and the context in which a noise occurs. We're able to withstand and expect a certain level of noisiness, but like I'll think about when I've got a sporting event on in my home, right? And I've got the TV turned way up because I want to hear every contact, every hit, and what's going on, and hear the crowd, and want to fill the whole home with some noise for that. But I'll come home from work sometimes, and one of my kids will have the TV on, and it's not even close to the volume level at which I would watch a sporting event at. But I come home and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so loud. You got to turn that down. Different volume levels, in fact, not even close. But the perception, the subjective assessment in the context. When you're at home at nighttime watching TV, why does it need to be that loud? That's at least my mental process. When really, objectively speaking, has nothing to do with the decibels or the amount of noise in the room. It's more about this subjective or perceived noisiness. Another little cool research example that they did was they took people and they exposed them to one of 2 settings. They put them in an office setting, and they went to one that was very, very quiet where there really wasn't a lot of noise. And then they went to another one where they put people in a setting where there was the typical amount of office noise, lots of people talking, printers and typing and et cetera, so on and so forth. And what they found was, again, one of those stress hormones, epinephrine, that's your fight or flight hormone, that was elevated in people that were exposed to the typical levels of office noises. But interestingly enough, when both of those populations that were exposed to the 2 conditions were asked if they felt more stress, from their own self-reporting, they did not report elevated levels of stress from one group to the other. However, when they actually looked at their epinephrine levels, when they took a more objective measurement of stress and looking at a stress hormone in particular, they did see that it was elevated. What can noise do? Noise pollution can disturb the nervous system and create an increase in stress levels. I know when I really need to focus, like when I'm driving home and it's pouring rain, which I just saw a huge lightning bolt streak across the sky here as I'm recording this. And there's the thunder. Look at that. When it's really pouring down rain and it's loud slamming down and I have to really focus, like I can't listen to my radio, I have to turn it down. The sound of the rain hitting the windshield as I'm driving is mind-numbing and loud enough as it is, and my stress is up. I am tensed. I'm gripping the wheel. It's a very intense experience. So I try to eliminate as much other noise. It's the worst when I'm driving with my kids and they keep carrying on or yelling in the back, and then my wife and I are screaming at them to stop talking, and it's dangerous because it's very distracting. So yeah, I can see what we're saying here about noise pollution. Again, it's all about the setting and the context. On the other side of things, there is such a thing as relaxing sound. White noise, a lot of people will sleep with those white noise machines, or now on your phones you have apps that you can play a sound like that. But white noise does help to drown out other sounds that may be distracting or stressful. Anybody that sleeps with a fan on all year round, and not necessarily for the cooling benefits, but because of the low constant hum of the fan rotating up on the ceiling, this is what you're doing. You're essentially creating your own white noise. Heat. We live in Florida, which is hot, and man, it's summertime and it is hot. There is something called the heat hypothesis. The heat hypothesis states that hot temperatures can increase aggressive motives and aggressive behaviors. The heat effect is the observed result of higher rates of aggression by people who are hot relative to people who are cooler. Here are some interesting things that have turned up from studies that support the link between temperature and behavior, and they probably will. You'll see that they make sense, but here is what actual science tells us. Baseball pitchers, they are more likely to hit batters with a pitched ball on hot days than they are on cooler days. So there's one. Rates of violent crime increased during the hottest times of the year and were higher in regions with hotter climates. Another one here, a classic study in Phoenix, Arizona found that aggressive horn honking increased at hotter temperatures, but only for drivers without air-conditioned cars. So if you do not have air conditioning, you're going to be laying on your horn a lot more, probably because you want people to get the heck out of your way so you can get to a cooler environment. And then there's another one, and this was an exercise done by Dutch police. Dutch police officers performed a simulated burglary scenario under hot or comfortable conditions, and the officers operating in the hot conditions reported more threatening impressions of the suspect and were more likely to draw their weapon and shoot the suspect relative to officers in cool conditions. Now again, this was a simulation. They were only using laser training weapons, but when it's hot, when the stress is elevated because of that, their judgment seems to be impacted. There's more aggressive means. So there is a lot out there to support this heat hypothesis and heat effect. It says a lot about all the crazy things that happen here in Florida, right? Another statistic, there are 2.6% more murders and assaults in the U.S. during the summertime than during other seasons of the year. Hot summers produce a bigger increase in violence than cooler summers. So when it's really hot, people are hot and bothered, and they will take that out on those around them. All right, so we've analyzed a lot of our different sensory inputs from the environment. Now, how do we take control? So what you first need to do is review and reflect on how sensory input, like sight, sound, smells, how do they contribute to your daily quality of life? Again, this class, we're all about recording things and writing them down and actually analyzing how they make us feel and what they do to us. Then identify aspects of your environment that either contribute to or take away from the balanced and healthy life that you desire. Some things that you can do, incorporate more nature into your life. I think you all saw the benefits of that when we did our mindfulness activity at the beginning of week 2. Organize and simplify, keeping everything together so it doesn't overwhelm you. And then feng shui. Feng shui was created by someone named Lo Pan. Lo Pan used to determine energy characteristics of building a room. So that's not a person. I swear to you, I read this just before I went through. And I've taught it, oh, I don't know, 6, 7 other times. Here we go. Practitioners of Feng Shui use a special compass, not a person, called a lo pan to determine the energy characteristics of a building or room. So that's used to determine those energy characteristics, and then they also use some tools to balance the energy so it will have a positive effect. I've never really done much with Feng Shui. You've heard of it before, probably in jest, someone joking about it, but it is a practice that is used to help control your surroundings and create better energy in your space so that it has a better, more positive effect on you and your resulting emotions. And we also know organizing an event, your environment can save time. We'll skip the culture connection. Move on to ergonomics. Now, Dr. Farrell, we know he was an ergonomist, and we usually talk about its benefits in terms of health and posture and injury, but the study of individual workers and the tasks they perform for the purpose of designing appropriate living and working environments. That's the definition, and the major goals really have to do with making work safer and enhancing worker and worksite well-being. Remember, everything is tied together. So that uncomfortable sense that comes with improper positioning and bad ergonomics, that can also take away from your well-being in other areas. So it is important to note here on this environmental component that we're discussing for this chapter. Here we go. The bane of my existence, but the thing I can't live without. Maybe you feel the same way. I know I usually do a lot of the talking while we're in class, but there's no denying that technology is all around us. We have a constant flow of information. How do we manage it? I think the answer for most, including myself, is not well. Techno-stress is a term here, and that's feelings of dependence, incompetence, anxiety, and frustration associated with the use of technology. Technosis is when people become so immersed in technology that they risk losing their own identity. Now, I don't think I go that far into things. That might be people who are a different person on the internet. Maybe you've seen some documentaries or specials on that. I think back in the day, MTV would do True Life on people that like had these avatars in video games online, and they lived their life like this avatar because it was completely different than themselves, and they were so tied and immersed in it that they really didn't have much of an existence as a human being anymore. That's what I think we're talking about with technosis. But technostress, we've got a tool coming up here that allows you to kind of look at it and see how much of it applies to you. So are you a victim? You could pause the lecture here and write some of these down. I sat and did it myself and was not really pleased with what I found, although I was also not that surprised, but because the techno-stress is around us. But this is more of technosis. Some of these, again, are kind of specific. Like, do you think you can't cook a meal without technological gadgets? I mean, I don't think I can cook a meal at all, so I don't know how one applies to me. But there's other ones here too. So what happens with technology? How does it affect our stress? How does it affect our lives? Well, here's a few things to note. Continuous partial attention. We're not always where we need to be because we've always got one eye or our attention drawn at something else. Multitasking madness. We are wired for distraction. Absolutely. The minute my phone vibrates or goes off, I want to, as I'm talking about it, I swear to you, I just clicked my phone because we're talking about it, and it's so automatic. I saw it in front of me, and I just wanted to look at the screen. And you know what? Yeah, there's some messages on there, including a text from Doc about us going to our field day tomorrow. And you know what? All this stuff can wait. I don't even need to look at it. It's just distracting me. It's literally happening as I'm doing it. And no, I didn't plan that for part of this recording. But we're wired for distraction. Information overload and continuous change, you betcha. Lack of alone time. Yeah, I mean, you might be alone, but you're not. You're not being mindful. You're spending it in cyberspace. Alienation, isolation, physical consequences. Just sitting and looking at it, the unhealthiness of that. Those are all things that we should be more concerned about. Sleep deprivation, and other things that have to do with your vision. Teens and younger people coming up aren't even using as much email just because of all this other stuff. I can tell you that even in the way I do business with my other stuff, it's not always face-to-face. It's not even always email. Like, a lot of times people will just Facebook message me and we'll work out details of things that way. It's kind of crazy. Here's some Facebook stats, and this is 5 years ago. I don't know what it is now. I'm sure there are some updated numbers. It'll probably be in the next edition of our text, but in December 2013, 757 million daily active users on average. And users spent, so of that 757 million, users spent about 20 billion minutes per day on Facebook in June of 2013. A lot of wasted time. So what do we do about it? Do we demonize technology and say, you know what, it's all bad? Well, I don't think so. It's more about taking a pro-humanity stance rather than an anti-technology stance. Remember, technology itself is a tool. It does not have to be abused. It does not have to be used. No matter how it's wired or what its purpose is or how addictive it can be, that's not necessarily what it is there for. You choose to use it. But if you are more focused on interacting with other people and being more into humanity, you can make that choice and use technology as the tool that it is really designed to be in the first place. Also, keep in mind that technology is really good about multitasking and doing a whole bunch of things at once. Just because it is capable of that and wired for it does not mean that we are capable of it and can handle it. Those are things that when I read and I go over and I review when I'm teaching a class like this, they really make me think twice about my use of technology. It's just very hard to shake. So if you want to make a healing environment, you have to start with how that's going to work. The impact of our environment can have a very profound effect on us. All right, we are going to end things here. Thank you all for watching. That's another chapter in the books. You will have some test questions on it. Hopefully my discussion of some of these topics, since we don't get to do it in class with this being a hybrid, will help you out. Thanks everybody. We'll see you on the next one.